Lifelines. When I was in second grade, my mother taught a weekend art class for me and 5 other students. She drove us to a local farm called Hidden Villa where we could draw and paint from nature. Two to a seatbelt, she said. I sat in the front, squished against Mary Ellen, who had short hair and dimples and a steady, calm way of breathing I could feel against my back. My mother loaded our equipment into the trunk. Each student had a small folding easel, a masonite board on which to clip or tape the paper, a watercolor paint set, a charcoal, an eraser, and a soft cloth. "What are we going to draw?" Joe asked. "I'm not sure," she said. "We'll find something when we get there." She wasn't like the other mothers. She and I weren't like other families. I worried that, as our teacher, she would reveal us how strange we were. A few days before, I'd walked in on my mother squatting on top of the toilet seat, perched up high, her trousers around her knees like a curtain, her feet planted on the rim. "What are you doing?" I asked, horrified. "I learned it in India," she said. "It's a better position. Close the door." The farm was inside the hills, covered in bay laurel trees with thin trunks dropping yellow half-moon leaves, a bright green strip of miner's lettuce along the road. The air was glassy and fragrant with the smell of the trees. It was a triangle of flat land surrounded by layers of hills owned by a family that had made money on asbestos. My mother said asbestos was insulation that turned out to be kind of poison, and I thought about this at the farm, how clean the air was, how lush the farm was, yet built on the proceeds of poison. We collected our equipment and followed my mother into a field near the parking lot, where a small barky tree stood up in isolation. A few leaves clung to the branches. Shoots of grass, like whiskers, grew around the base of the trunk, with dirt clods visible between the neon blades. "This one," she said. We arranged our easels in a semicircle. Past the tree was a fenced garden, a barn, some sheds. Beyond those, hills wrinkled up together at the end of the narrow valley, like pinched skin. Tree, green grass, blue hills, then purple hills, sky. It would be hard to get the whole scene onto my small piece of paper. "Stick the easels deep into the dirt to stabilize them," my mother said. She went around and pushed our easels into the rough ground, adjusting them, displaying her natural authority and comfort with the physical world. Her bold speech and movements new to me, even a little frightening. Once we'd tapped the paper to our masonite boards, she stood in front of us with a pointed brush in one hand, her other hand held up flat like a page. "I want to show you how to use a brush before we start," she said. "You don't have to press down head on like this." She demonstrated, making the hairs on the brush splay out on her palm like a mop, but draw the bristles along the paper in one direction, moving with instead of against the hairs. I had known for years how to use a brush and was annoyed to be instructed like the others. We began to draw. The square-edged contraire crayons were brown sticks that looked something like the branches themselves. We would paint on top of the drawing to add color. "Don't draw the tree you think you see," my mother said. "Draw the tree. Trust your eye." I wasn't sure where on the page to make the tree begin, from where it should grow, up through the gradations of hills to the sky. The ground with the grasses took up almost as much room as the hills, I noticed. Now that I was really looking at the scene before me, I worried my tree might end up in a tiny spot in the center surrounded by the blank white space I knew my mother had harbored. "The first mark takes courage," she said, glancing at my blank paper. "And remember, there are no straight lines in nature." I made a few straight marks. "A spill on the ground can be more interesting than a drawing," she said. It was a phrase I'd heard her say before, from one of her teachers at the community college. When she and I drew together, she wouldn't let me use the black paint that came with a set, insisting that black was not a color, and that if I looked harder, I would see something else. She didn't believe in the bad guy and the good guy in books or movies either, and became angry with me when I referred to characters that way. To me, such titles, such a color offered relief because they seemed like ledges where one could rest. She walked around among us as we worked, helping one student smudge out a part that wasn't right, helping another begin to draw the place where a branch shot out from the trunk. "May I?" my mother said before she took the crayon from Mary Ellen, addressing her as if she were an adult. "I want you to try to capture the spirit of the tree," she said. "Not just the way it looks, but the life force inside it." It surprised me that no one smirked at this, that everyone continued to draw with the focus I lacked. Earlier, I hadn't wanted to be as associated with her. Now I hope to be singled out as her daughter, the insider, possessor of knowledge the others didn't have. I thought she spoke in a language no one understood but me, and I was ashamed of understanding it myself, but the other students listened as if they too understood, and were not ashamed. It was difficult to see the tree only as if it felt like writing with my left hand. The idea of the tree kept creeping back into my fingers and my eyes, so I had to move fast when I saw something. Before it came the idea of the tree again. Before it became the idea of the tree again. For real, for real. "Close one eye if it helps," she said. I tried it. The world flattened, and then something unexpected happened. The branch I was drawing didn't jut. It was no longer a branch, but a shape made of light. Inside, other shapes made of light. It thrilled to see it. The tree was just a shape, nothing to do with branches. I drew it quickly, the way it looked, not the way it was. There, I was finished. I'd seen it for a moment. It was enough. We began to use the watercolors, adding a layer of color to the drawings we made. Trees needed sunlight, water, nutrients, she said. But if they didn't, or if they have too many, or too abundantly, they also don't flourish. Right. Some struggle makes them stronger, makes the fruit trees produce better fruit. She would repeat this idea many times over the years, past the point when I understood it was a metaphor. See colors as they are, not the one ones they're supposed to be, she said. All right. She'd shown me once how an orange in a bowl can be blue, reflecting sky, or purple in shadow, or white with glare. When this sight happens, she said, it's a surprise that how you know it's true. There's no such thing as color without color around it. Even the color of the paper is not nothing. Everything matters, not just of itself, but in relation to everything else. At some point, she must have touched her face, maybe brushing a strand of hair away, and when I looked, she had a brown smudge across the ridge of her nose. Mom, I said, you have charcoal on your face. It doesn't matter, Lisa, she said. Before the patterns came, she went around and made comments looking at our drawings. She called it the critique. I love the composition. She said to one student, beautiful, subtle. She said to another, she's found Joe's picture particularly impressive. This part, she said, pointing to the hills, is sublime. Wow. In mine, she complimented the swishy movement of the tree, but said it was incomplete. I'd finished too quickly, she said, drawing the painting impatiently, as if the whole exercise had been a race. Steve's supposed to come over and bring the bed tomorrow, she said, his name like we knew him. He'd offered to bring this bed over twice already, but then he didn't show. My mother had curtained the small alcove with a skylight off the living room, and this was where the bed would go, replacing the futon on the floor where I slept when I didn't share her bed. His girlfriend, whom we'd never met, had even called my mother to apologize, promising that this time he'd show up. Steve. I knew so little about him. He was like those Michelangelo sculptures of men trapped in rough stone, half smooth, half rough, that made you imagine the part inside that had not yet come out. He didn't come last time, I said. We'd waited for an hour. Maybe he'd know what bed to buy. Maybe he didn't know how to find our house. Maybe my mother told him the wrong time. He's promised to come this time, she said, so we'll see. We waited inside first, and then we went outside to the asphalt circle and watched the street. I was so excited for his arrival that I'd worn my nice dress, given to me by the rock climber, and I was fluttery in my stomach. Cars passed outside the driveway. Each one held the possibility of being him. We waited. I don't think he's gonna come, my mother finally said after some time. We went back inside. I felt like I'd been emptied out. The day, charged with excitement, newness, extravagance, and mystery, unlike other days, changed back into a dull and ordinary day, just like us again, and nothing to do. Let's go for a skate. When my mother and I went roller skating, our favorite thing was to find the soft cement. If you were walking, the seam between one type of pavement and another was not obvious, but on skates you felt like a clear difference between the two. When, we said the soft pavement was like butter, transitioning onto the buttery parts of the rough, jangly pavement, the roughest parts vibrating up through my knees and hips to make my cheeks shake, my eyeballs itch. I felt like floating. One section we'd found was near the lot on Oak Grove where we used to live. Our old detached studio, along with the main house, had since been ripped down and replaced with a brown shingled Commersa Bank. Your umbilical cord is buried in the dirt somewhere underneath that bank, she said when we passed it. This disturbed me. Surely other mothers didn't bury umbilical cords in yards. The soft cement was located in front of a Fox Palladian office building with two swooping walkways curving up over a rock garden to an entrance door made of tinted glass. The cement on the ramps was silken, lined with curved iron banisters. We skated in a circle, up one, down another, and back up again. Up again. She kept glancing at me as we skated. I didn't let on that I knew she was looking. You know, you're just the daughter I wanted, she said. Exactly the one. On the farm, before you were born there, I was this little girl, 3 or 4 years old, with her mother. A little Taurus girl, precarious and smart. I thought I wanted that. I know, I said. She told me the story before. I don't only love you, she said often. I also like you. And he named a computer after me. He pretended he hadn't afterward, and then she told me the story again of how they'd named me together in the field, how he vetoed all her choices until she thought of Lisa. He loves you, she said. He just doesn't know he loves you. This was hard to grasp. If he really saw you, and understood what he was missing, how he wasn't showing up for you, it would kill him. He'd be like this. She stopped skating and grabbed the railing and clutched her heart, gave an anguished, grief-stricken look, hunched her back as if she'd fallen over and die. I tried to think of what he'd been missing. Nothing came up. I heard from a few people much later that in those days my father carried a photo of me in his wallet. He would pull it out and hold it up at dinner parties, showing it around and say, "It's not my kid, but she doesn't have a father, so I'm not trying to be there for her. It's his loss." My mother said as we skated home, his great loss. He'll get it someday. He'll come back and it'll rip his heart open when he sees you, how much you're like him and how much he's missed. I've sensed it was the right time to make a play for a kitten. The office of the Humane Society was located on the edge of Baylands Nature Preserve in a government-style building. They have too many kittens, my mother said on the drive over as I tried to contain my excitement. If they don't find homes for them, they put them to sleep. The main room was open plan, echoey, with a beamed high ceiling and a stone floor. The animals were in the back through the door. The woman at the front desk was dressed in an army green uniform with a matching belt and many stiff pockets. She pulled out a clipboard and asked where we lived and how long we'd been there. A house in Menlo Park, my mother said, for a few months now. And before that, the woman asked, we stayed in a friend's house. For 2 months, my mother said, her tone flat. And in the place before that, for months. The woman's mouth became fixed as she wrote all this down on her clipboard. I wished my mother would lie or skip some of the moves to make us look better. It wasn't until she started telling this woman about all of our moves that I understood this was something we should have kept hidden. Even though my mother had agreed to come here and get a pet, I began to suspect that she was still ambivalent and so refused to shade her answers, letting the woman's impression of us sour, or that she was profoundly dedicated to honesty, or that she began to derive satisfaction from the dry clarity of an aerial view that this woman's questioning provided, becoming more interested in this unfolding narrative that she was in a cat. Here was the landscape of our lives, seen as a pattern from way up. We have a yard, I said. The woman's addressed my mother. Do you think you'd be able to care for an animal with so much shifting around? I think so, my mother said. We've stabilized somewhat. The woman sat up straight. I don't think it would be possible for us to give you a kitten at this time. I didn't expect such decisiveness. We were not even taken in to see the animals. My mother and I walked out of the building into the pungent salt air of the Baylands. Not talking to each other, shocked and weary. A few days later, we stopped at a pet store where she brought me two white mice and the most expensive cage they had, made of glass. The bed arrived at some point without my father. It was a loft bed composed of a series of red metal cylinders that twisted into one another like a circuit, forming a kind of jungle gym. My mother assembled it and flattened the boxes it came in. Besides, it connected with the same metal tubing uh, that was small and connected to a white desk made of a particle board, and above the desk, a matching white shelf. I climbed the ladder to the bed at the top, right under the skylight. It was my first bed and the first gift from my father.